Folks, welcome. We're glad you're all here. Today I'm talking, or right now at least, I'm talking with Justin Gary, who has designed one of the most popular games that I've seen in a long time, Ascension, and from Stoneblade Games. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm very excited.
So Ascension's kind of fascinating to me because there are so many games that come out, they come and they go. But Ascension has stuck around through many different versions. The continual sets coming out, a very, very popular online app for it. What do you think keeps that going?
Well, it's a couple of different factors. I mean, this is actually Ascension's 10-year anniversary right now as we're talking. This the first copy was sold at Gen Con of 2010, and we've had over 15 complete standalone expansions as well as collector's editions and promo packs and all kinds of stuff. And what I think keeps it going is one, we're lucky to have a great fan base who is just enthusiastic about it, and they're able to play and connect through a variety of ways. As you mentioned, the app is a big part of it. You can download it for free on iOS or Android, or you can get it on Steam, and it lets people play no matter where they are. You can play in 5 minutes, and so it lets people stay connected. And the other thing is, we always try to keep things interesting and innovate. With each one of the new expansions, we try to bring something new to the table. I work very hard to manage it so it never gets so complex that new players can't come in, but I want to keep it interesting and innovative for new players. So whether we did it with our Skulls and Sails pirate expansion last time, where we added spatial relations and pirate ships moving around the board and a Kraken, or if we add new Dreamscape with cards that are available outside of the game that now change the resources up and require you to do new things. Every component that we do every year is to try to keep things fresh, keep people excited, and stay relevant. Even though we were one of the first deck building games to ever come out, we want to make sure that we're always innovating and providing new and exciting things for players.
I also found it fascinating that this was one of the first deck building games, and when you jumped into this genre, what had been your background before this?
Yeah, so I originally started out as a professional Magic the Gathering player. I won the U.S. National Championships back in 1997, dating myself a little bit, and that's kind of how I played. I paid my way through college was playing Magic, and so it was a really fun way to kind of get to obviously make a living for that time. But it also taught me a ton about games, right? To be able to play at that competitive level, you have to be able to sort of break games apart into their constituent components and figure out how to rebuild them back together. And it was a lot of that experience, the things I loved about not only playing Magic, but the drafting and being able to build cards and build your decks on the fly that ended up becoming the inspiration for Ascension, right? The difference between Ascension and Dominion, which was the only deck building game that came out when I first started working on it, was that, in Dominion you have this preset of cards that are all available
Right.
at the beginning of the game. And it sort of feels like a constructed game of, TCGs. And be able to take that experience and put it in a box is amazing. And Ascension was the first one to have a changing center row of cards that every time you pulled one card out of the six that were available, a new one would come up. And that was really representing that drafting element, that element of like, I only have a small subset of cards and my decisions have to vary based on what cards are available at any given time, which makes the game a lot faster and more, variety from game to game. So that was kind of my background that brought me into it. And, in between, I worked on a bunch of different designs, like the World of Warcraft miniatures game and the Versus System trading card game. And so I'd done a lot of designs for other companies and worked with other brands before, taking my hand with Ascension.
I guess I never thought about it much that way, that you actually are the one who, that whole shuffle, that sliding row of cards to buy, which is now pretty much a mainstay of many deck building games.
Yeah, it's one of these things that really, like, when we first came out with it, it was very innovative, and now it's become a sort of building block. And it's actually one of the things I'm excited to talk about is now, you just releasing a deck building game today, they get lost in the shuffle. I mean, there's,
Right.
pun not intended, but, there's a ton of these things that are out there, and you have to do something now that takes that building block and builds something that's unique and different, and so that the deck building genre is a piece of larger puzzles. And that's what I get excited about nowadays.
So we have this new game coming out now, going to Kickstarter, Ascension Tactics. What's the difference here? This sounds like it's more than just another expansion in the series.
Correct. So for our 10th anniversary, we wanted to do what was sort of the most ambitious thing yet, which is make an entirely new game that's built, as I said, on the building block of Ascension. So if you imagine the combination of an Ascension deck building game with a tactical miniatures game, that is really what Ascension Tactics is. So you will not only, draft, sort of build your deck as you go, but you also can either you can draft miniatures for use during the game, and then you use the cards from your hand to both power and command those miniatures, as well as upgrade them, and you can attach constructs to them and give them boosts and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's a real, a pure hybrid of those two genres. And it does a lot of really interesting things that make, kind of take the best of both worlds and bring them together.
So this is a whole new game. Is there any compatibility between the games?
It is not compatible with previous Ascensions, but anybody that's familiar with Ascension will be very familiar with this. So you'll see the same 6-card starting center row. You have the same starting center deck, same starting decks. There's still Mystics and Heavy Infantries and Cultists. But after that, things start to change. So you use runes to acquire cards from the center row, but instead you'll use power to command your miniatures. Instead of killing monsters like in old Ascension, where you'll use kill monsters and get honor, every miniature has a certain command cost in power that allows you to activate that miniature. And then when you activate it, you can move it and attack with it. And so that lets us balance the miniatures. So even when you can have a team of all giant monsters if you want, but you're going to need a lot of power to command them and get them to move around the board. Or you could try to be more stealthy and have cheaper to command miniatures, but you may need to get some boosts or run around the other big guys. And so that balance of building your deck to either, try to get a lot of cards from the center with a lot of runes, or to command your miniatures and upgrade your miniatures with constructs, that becomes a lot of the strategy in the core of the game. And we've layered underneath that, each miniature can not only be done in a basic scenario, which is kind of you're trying to control victory point locations throughout the board, but we also have an entire scenario book with tons of different ways to play, mobile terrain. There's 3-player modes, 4-player modes. We actually have what we call the boss deck, which is a sort of AI opponent that you can play either as a solo mode or cooperative with a couple of other players, and all kinds of different ways to play. So we really just tried to do everything we could to make this like a great, really repetitive, really replayable experience. And then the one other connection to Ascension, of course, is it's all of your favorite Ascension characters, right? We've gotten to turn our Hot Templar into a 3D figure. The Cultist is a crazy looking sculpt. And so anybody that's loved Ascension over the years
can now smack him down multiple times.
That's correct. And he's hilarious. Even more hilarious in 3D than he was in 2D.
Well, let me ask you this. I've always been curious. Where did all this come from?
Yeah, so, there's a couple of different things that brought this to life. As I mentioned before, we're always trying to innovate with Ascension. We're always trying to find new things that, kind of bring, elevate the genre and give you something new. And we knew that for the 10th anniversary, we would do something really, really special. So we spent a lot of time, this is over 2 years ago now, we were kind of planning for this. What could we do that would be the most exciting? And I have always loved miniatures games. I know my background is primarily, card games and trading card games, but I grew up playing, Warhammer 40K and HeroClix and, HeroScape and all kinds of stuff like that. And then before I started my company, I designed the World of Warcraft miniatures game. And I actually became not only the designer, but the product manager and brand manager. And so I'd gone through the whole process of making minis before. And so that was kind of what got me to start a company. It was like, all right, well, if I can do all this, I'll give it a shot. So I loved that game. I mean, that game had a really innovative timing system where each miniature would pay ticks to move based on the power level of its action, and then the number of ticks would tell you how long it takes before they get to go again. And I was originally just thinking of bringing that back as a system, but working with the team, we found something that I think was, way better, which was this merge of like a pure kind of deck building game to miniatures game hybrid, which is where we sort of ended up to help make the game more variable. We've removed dice from the equation entirely. I mean, I love dice games, don't get me wrong, but being able to have something where you control your fate with the cards that you have, where the strategy comes in and the variance comes in up front, and then you can decide and make your plays that way, is really exciting. And so, it came down from just something that we were just so enthusiastic about. I mean, the amount of work it took, you could probably tell just from the description, the amount of work that it took to build this thing is like many orders of magnitude greater than what it takes to build a normal Ascension set. I've been building Ascension sets so long, I can do it, I can almost do it in my sleep. Building this took 2 years of effort and, getting back up and ramping up the ability to sculpt, and huge amounts of costs and huge amounts of testing. And we've been expanding our testing network to tons of fans around the world. We had to go through the COVID process. And so we had to put everything into Tabletop Simulator and test virtually. Tons and tons of work. But it's something I'm super passionate about. It's like super exciting, super fun, and to be able to bring that to life as a way to honor the 10 years that we put into this, as a way to give something to fans, and as a way to evolve something new, right? Again, Ascension brought a new thing to the table 10 years ago. Now it's a commonplace. And now we want to bring something new to the table again, which is to say, like, take the best of deck building and add it to another genre. And that's something I'm really excited about, and I can't wait for more people to get to see it.
I'm pretty interested. I have not. You're right. I don't think I've seen a deck building miniature style game. How long did you say a game will last?
Typical game is going to last an hour or less, 45 minutes to an hour. Obviously, if you're playing a 4-player game or you're playing through the campaign where you're going to have multiple scenarios, it can take a lot longer. But we try to keep most games on average under an hour.
All righty. Well, folks, that's Ascension Tactics. We'll have more information, a link in the description here below where you can find out more about the game. I wish you great success with it. I'm very interested to seeing it myself. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, Tom. You've always been a big supporter of us. We would not be here without you and everybody else out there, so it means a lot to me. Good to be here.